You forgot Valentine's Day, and somewhere in the back of your mind right now, a tiny alarm is going off. Not because you don't love your partner, but because somewhere along the way, you were taught that forgetting this one specific day means something terrible about you. That panic you're feeling, that's not love. That's conditioning. And today, we need to talk about that. Because here's the thing nobody's saying out loud. The people with the healthiest, most lasting, most genuinely satisfying relationships, they're usually not the ones losing sleep over Valentine's Day. I know how that sounds. I know some part of you wants to roll your eyes and say, okay, sure, that's just something people say when they're too lazy to put in the effort. But stay with me, because what I'm about to share isn't cynicism. It's actually one of the most quietly reassuring things you'll hear about love. And by the end of this, I think you're going to look at your relationship, and honestly, even yourself, a little differently. Let's start with something real. Picture this. It's February 13th. You're scrolling your phone before bed, and you see someone's post about the reservation they've had booked since December. The custom gift they ordered 3 months ago. The handwritten note they've been hiding since New Year's. And suddenly your stomach drops. Because you have nothing planned. Not a card. Not a table. Not even a vague idea. And within about 30 seconds, your brain has gone from mildly guilty to catastrophizing your entire relationship. Do I even try hard enough? Do they feel loved? Are we actually okay? That spiral? That's not you being a bad partner. That's your brain doing something incredibly predictable under pressure. And understanding why it does that changes everything. There's a concept in psychology called symbolic self-completion. The idea is simple. When we feel insecure about something, when we feel like we might be failing at something important, we reach for symbols. Visible external proof that says, no, look, I'm doing it right. See? Big bouquet. Expensive dinner. Heart-shaped thing. Ikare. The gesture becomes a way to quiet the anxiety, not necessarily to express actual love. And the more insecure we feel about the relationship, the more elaborate the gesture has to be, because the symbol needs to be big enough to drown out the doubt. Think about that for a moment. We've built an entire cultural holiday around that exact psychological mechanism. The bigger the Valentine's Day production, the less we have to sit with the uncomfortable question of whether we're actually showing up for each other the rest of the year. It's like going to the gym once a year and expecting to stay fit. Your body doesn't work that way. Neither does your relationship. There are researchers, John Gottman and Robert Levinson, who spent literal decades watching couples. Not the highlight reel versions. The real ones. Couples eating breakfast together, arguing about money, watching television, living their ordinary lives. And what they found completely reframed how we understand connection. The couples who stayed together, the ones who actually reported being satisfied and close and genuinely bonded, they weren't the ones who had the most romantic vacations or the most spectacular anniversaries. They were the ones who responded to each other in small moments. Gottman called these bids for connection. One partner says something, reaches out in some small way, and the other turns toward them. Not dramatically, not perfectly, just consistently. Things like noticing your partner seems quieter than usual and asking about it. Remembering how they take their coffee without being told. Laughing at the same dumb thing for the 100th time. Listening, actually listening, when they're complaining about something that doesn't matter to you at all. That's where intimacy lives. Not in the grand gesture. In the Tuesday afternoon. In the unremarkable Saturday morning. In the boring, unglamorous, invisible moments that nobody ever posts about. And this is where Valentine's Day starts to quietly work against you. When you funnel all of your relationship energy into one single day, what you're unconsciously communicating, even if you don't mean to, is that the other 364 days are somehow secondary. You're training both yourself and your partner to measure love by production value. And that's a losing game, because production value is expensive and exhausting, and it has almost nothing to do with feeling genuinely loved. There's research on something called prescribed relationship behaviors. Basically, when people feel like they have to be romantic because a date on the calendar demands it, not because they genuinely want to be, something interesting happens. Relationship satisfaction actually goes down. Not up, down, because your brain is remarkably good at telling the difference between I'm doing this because I want you to feel loved and I'm doing this because I'll feel like a failure if I don't. And your partner's brain is equally good at sensing that difference, even when neither of you puts words to it. Obligation looks different from desire. It feels different. And over time, that difference matters enormously. But let's also talk about what Valentine's Day does to the way we see our relationships from the outside. Because this part is sneaky, and most people never notice it happening. In the 1950s, a psychologist named Leon Festinger described something called social comparison theory. The short version: human beings are constantly, almost involuntarily, measuring themselves against other people. Not because we're vain or insecure by nature, but because comparison is how our brains gauge whether we're doing okay. It's an ancient survival mechanism, and it was mostly harmless when our frame of reference was our small, immediate community. Now imagine what happens to that mechanism when Valentine's Day arrives and your entire social media feed becomes a curated exhibition of everyone else's relationships at their most intentional and polished and expensive. Your brain is not equipped to remember, in that moment, that nobody posts about the nights they fell asleep mid-conversation. Nobody documents the Tuesday they had a stupid argument over nothing and went to bed slightly annoyed. Nobody shares the quiet, boring, deeply comfortable evenings that are actually the foundation of a real relationship. You're comparing your everyday reality to everyone else's highlight performance. And your subconscious is quietly asking, is our love not enough? Should we be doing more? Is something wrong with us? None of which is true, all of which feels real. And then there's what this day does to people who are single. And this deserves more honesty than it usually gets. Neuroscientists studying something called social pain have found something remarkable. Being excluded, feeling left out, being reminded that you are on the outside of something everyone else seems to have. This activates the same regions of your brain as physical pain. Not metaphorical pain. Actual, measurable, neurological pain. So when you're single and the entire world is performing romantic love for one full day, the discomfort you feel is not weakness or self-pity or you being dramatic. It is a real, biological response to perceived exclusion. But here's the part that's actually kind of freeing. That pain is not coming from being alone. It's coming from the cultural agreement that you're supposed to have something today that you don't. Take away the agreement. Take away the expectation that February 14th is a referendum on your lovability, and it's just another Thursday. The suffering is manufactured, not by you, but by a collective story we've all agreed to tell, and you're allowed to opt out of that story. Now, I want to be careful here, because I'm not telling you to never celebrate. I'm not telling you that romance is a trap, or that gestures are meaningless, or that you should spend Valentine's Day sending your partner a passive-aggressive essay about the psychology of prescribed behaviors. That would be deeply counterproductive and also a terrible evening. What I'm saying is something more subtle, and honestly, more hopeful than that. A psychology professor named Sarah Algo spent years studying what she called find, remind, and bind. The idea that gratitude between partners, genuine, spontaneous, non-obligatory gratitude, serves three functions. It helps you notice what's good. It reminds you why you chose this person. And it deepens the bond between you. But the key word in all of that is genuine. Gratitude that is performed on a schedule because a date demands it loses most of its power. Gratitude that shows up unexpectedly on a random Wednesday because you notice something, because something your partner did quietly moved you. That kind of gratitude builds something real. And there's one more piece to this worth sitting with. There's a theory called self-expansion theory, the idea that we're drawn to relationships that help us grow. And the couples who report the deepest satisfaction aren't always the ones doing the most expensive things together. They're the ones doing novel things, new things, small adventures, shared discoveries, trying a recipe neither of you has made before, taking a different route on a walk, watching something outside your usual taste because they love it. The novelty matters more than the price tag. The shared experience matters more than the Instagrammability of it. Which means the most romantic thing you can do on Valentine's Day or any other day is just be genuinely present, curious about your partner, actually there, not performing being there. So here's what I want to leave you with. If your relationship feels special mostly on Valentine's Day, that's worth noticing. Not as a judgment, as information. Because a relationship that runs on scheduled performances of love is working harder than it needs to and feeling less than it could. The relationships that last, the ones that feel genuinely warm and close and safe, they're built out of ordinary moments where someone chose to pay attention, to show up, to care on a Tuesday when nobody was watching and nothing was expected. That's not less romantic than a candlelit dinner. It is actually the most romantic thing there is. So if you want to do something for Valentine's Day, do something. If you don't. Let be light. Let be optional. And then spend the rest of the year being the kind of partner whose love doesn't need a calendar to be felt. Because if someone already knows they're loved, not because of what you did on February 14th, but because of how you've been showing up all along, that's not a relationship that needs to prove anything. That's a relationship that already is something. If this kind of thinking resonates with you, I'd love for you to subscribe. This channel is about understanding human behavior in plain language. The real reasons we feel what we feel and do what we do. No jargon, no lectures. Just honest conversations about what it means to be human. There's a lot more coming, and I think you'll want to stick around for it.